Welcome to the Beyond the Vines podcast, where I interview local business owners in Sonoma County to highlight small business and grow our community. I'm your host, Amy Ehlers, a mom, realtor, and Sonoma County native, and I'm excited to connect you to some amazing people in this beautiful area that we call home. Welcome back to the Beyond the Vines podcast, and thank you again for joining us today. We've had such good episodes every week, just some really awesome businesses coming in. I'm learning so much. Today's topic is one I know literally nothing about, so bear with me here. Today I have Joel Burkett with 707 Racing Suspension, and I am really excited to hear more about what he does. So with that, welcome, Joel.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in today, especially we've got kind of a storm going on outside, so Thank you for making it in. So what inspired you to start 707 Racing Suspension, and what services do you offer?
I guess what started us in the business, or me in the business, is just being an avid racer and dirt bike rider myself. It's just something I always struggled with, as getting faster and just being a bigger body on the motorcycle. So just had a lot of other people do my stuff, and just eventually just kind of just struggled a little bit here and there being a bigger person. There wasn't a lot of people in the area that really did it at the time.
Yeah, so, I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
You had to kind of ship your stuff down, Southern California or whatnot. So, just kind of started learning it myself a little bit, and I think it was kind of one of the benefits that helped me the most out of racing over time,
I didn't even think about that, size and all. That makes sense. That's such a good point.
It does, yeah. Absolutely.
It's funny because I read your Google reviews before when I was trying to figure out what suspension is. And I noticed, first of all, everybody loves you. Everybody is so impressed with your work, but it feels like a lot of people are coming from farther away now, kind of like how you mentioned you were having to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure as most people would see or do see, we bend over backwards for our customers, and it's a very challenging job, It's kind of, there's no such thing as a perfect fit, right? It's not like you just go buy a pair of shoes like normal and you wear them and you're stoked on that pair of shoes. It's just, they always need to be tailored and, just a little bit more comfort or more firmer or whatever you're trying to do.
That totally makes sense. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's not like a pair of shoes. And I'm sure there's probably trial and error as people are testing them out.
There is a ton of trial and error.
Yeah.
And, but that's what, I think that's what makes it so challenging. You just kind of stick to your guns and trust what you're doing is right in the right direction most of the time if you can.
Well, it seems like you're nailing it because your reviews are real good.
Thank you.
So for those who don't know, can you explain what suspension does or is and why it's so important in racing?
Yeah, so there's suspension on everything from cars to motorcycles to bicycles these days, right? And for the dirt bike, we're racing on a lot of different terrain, from rocks and sand to a motocross track with big, huge jumps and whoops. And the average dirt bike comes set up for kind of like a standard intermediate rider with a standard type of dirt depending on the bike you buy. But not everybody is 160 pounds and, 5'10" or whatever, 5'9". So, as far as the suspension goes, what it's doing is it's controlling the bike, keeping the bike straight, keeping the bike stable. A lot of it's bike setup, like keeping, the fork height correct or the amount of how much the back of the bike is squatting. And then most importantly, just the correct spring rate for your size and body. A rider that is 175 pounds is usually stoked, where a rider that's 200 pounds is going to need some stiffer springs and maybe some adjusting versus a really light rider at 120 pounds is going to need some softer springs and some adjusting. So if you're not in the ballpark, it can be pretty challenging to get comfortable, And there's a lot of people who do. They just wing it and ride with what they have. But I don't think this is a person that's ever spent the money and got it done correctly and was like, wow, that wasn't worth every penny I spent,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just to educate me a little bit. So when you're talking about the different terrain in a race, is the terrain similar throughout that same race? Are they mostly on dirt or are they mostly on gravel, or is it different? Does it change throughout the race?
So it does. And that's what makes it so challenging. Even the best suspension tuners in the world, factory riders that are making mega bucks, they are still probably sitting behind a desk right now, scratching their head what they can do to make their bike better for next Saturday night. So the challenge really lies in like an off-road race, you'd be racing in like for a perfect example, this weekend there's a enduro at Shasta. It's a harder type of dirt, a lot of rocks, a lot of hills. You'd want like a softer setup to absorb the rocks and to get more traction. And then like if you have a rider that's going to go race motocross or like a desert race the following weekend, he may struggle because now he's riding in like a deeper sand.
Right.
The suspension needs to be stiffer to hold up more.
Right.
He's probably still dealing with rocks, but in a different way. So
interesting.
And then like as far as motocross goes, again, it's a completely different setup for the reason you're hitting big jumps. The dirt is usually prepped and ripped, which they go in with a tractor and they rip the dirt really deep and make it soft. So it gets really rough, really rutted. But the bump profile is generally like bigger.
God. Okay.
So the suspension needs to be just a little bit like slower, more or less, versus
that makes sense.
Like an off-road terrain, probably a little bit softer.
I was thinking when you said a race this weekend in Shasta, I was thinking like weather-wise too. Does that contribute? Like if it's pouring rain, what happens?
It absolutely does.
Yeah. That's going to totally can change things, I imagine.
It does. A lot of that would be like probably tire selection.
Yeah.
Mud can be a very challenging thing to throw in the mix because there's so many different kinds of mud. There could be it rains, quits raining, and the bike gets really, really heavy.
Oh,
and just really hard to move around. In that case,
I didn't think about that. Okay.
You would probably almost want to go stiffer. If it's raining during the race, usually it washes all the mud off of the bike, so it's just really slippery.
Okay.
And if the dirt's really hard, you could struggle going too stiff because now the bike's not going to want to hook up and get traction.
My gosh, this is so complicated.
It really is. And, that's why some people call it a black art. And like, it's just kind of a lot of experience.
Yeah.
I
think that's why you're so needed too. And again, like that's why you have such a good customer base, I feel like, because you can read all that. It's impressive.
Yeah. A lot of years of riding a lot of motorcycles. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So can you kind of walk us through the process of tuning a suspension for optimal performance? Again, trial and error.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, the trial and error stuff is kind of no longer because we've done it so long now. We kind of have a really good idea what we're going to do. But there still is times to this day we kind of have to just pull something out of the hat and try it, Yeah. But as far as like tuning a set of suspension, the bike would come in. Most of our customers that have had us work on their stuff now just bring the bike straight from the dealership to us and
that
have
makes
us
sense.
just do it because they know what they want versus somebody who just doesn't know, breaks it in, whatever. Then they come in and we kind of have a questionnaire of just all these questions of, what you like, what you don't like, how much you weigh, what your discipline is, how tall you are makes a big difference in bike setup. So it's kind of just a big questionnaire. And then we kind of go through and try to nail it down to like make a game plan of what we're going to do. And then usually talk it over with the customer, make sure that's kind of what he's looking for. And then at that point, it just really depends on the motorcycle. And that's where like we come in. Like we really know all the bikes really well. So say it's a Yamaha YZ 450 and he's racing it off-road. We know that bike's going to be way too stiff for him. So we'll go in and make some adjustments in the valving and give him more comfort for that type of riding.
That's amazing.
And then we would match the springs for his body weight, whether that's soft or stiffer. We use a lot of like low friction parts inside the suspension. So like a low friction piston band, just keeping things moving easily. And friction creates heat. So you're trying to always, try to really keep things cool and keep them breaking down.
That makes sense. Do a lot of your customers have multiple bikes for different kinds of racing or?
They all wish they could.
I was going to say, this sounds like an expensive
It's a really
hobby.
inexpensive sport.
Or sport, exactly.
Or whatever you want to call
sport,
it.
Absolutely sport,
But most of the guys that are really serious have two bikes or they have two sets of suspension because it's a really good rider. And that's one cool thing about like the dirt bike world and racing motorcycles. Believe it or not, we could get the best rider on a bone stock bike and he's still going to beat the guy who has the best bike out there that isn't as good of a rider because it really comes down to the Indian over the arrow in motorcycle racing. So it definitely helps. It's like a huge advantage if you can get the bike set up good. But yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. So what's the most challenging or unique project you've ever worked on? Probably all of them, I would guess.
They all are pretty unique.
Yeah.
We've done some crazy stuff. We built it was like a Harley Davidson for like the bomber class in National Hare and Hound.
Oh my gosh.
Really big, heavy, just like motorcycle. And we built some like Yamaha dirt suspension on it and all kinds of crazy stuff. And I think it was cool because the guy went out and won the championship on it.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So that was pretty rad. Yeah, on like a 400 and plus pound motorcycle.
Wow.
So that was pretty neat.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And then honestly, one of the projects we're working on right now is really cool. Just because it's kind of something I don't do all the time. We have a really fast kid from Northern California here. He's going to be going to race Daytona Supercross in like the mini class. And so we're building him like a pretty trick set of like Supercross suspension.
Wow.
And that's something that's a little bit out of the realms of what we do. But we got a pretty good idea and we got a pretty good build going. So
that makes it kind of like a fun challenge, I bet, though.
Yeah, it's a little bit frightening because we're on the main stage, but at the same time, we have a little bit of time. So if he needs to make an adjustment, we try to leave our customers wiggle room. So if they're over in Florida testing, we can be like, hey, man, just do this or that really quick. And
that's a good point.
Versus having to come all the way back here, to the shop. So,
which also brings up a good point too. Like, what are the age ranges of your clients? Because I know it's a huge sport in this area for kids as well. So that's probably a lot of your customers.
It is. It's kind of cool. I think there's been more kids riding dirt bikes.
That's so cool.
Lately because of the whole Stasic thing. The little electric bikes have gotten kids started younger. So we've been seeing a lot of younger kids riding and racing. And it's a fun family sport to get out with the dad and the family.
For sure.
And, see a lot of women and trail racers now too. Actually, there's quite a few of them on the line.
Sure.
So,
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I didn't really think about the kids until you mentioned that. That's such a big. You see that a lot now, so that's amazing. So what is one thing you kind of wish more riders or drivers understood about suspension, probably especially newer ones?
I would say just like how important it really is. It's always easy to blame yourself, right?
Totally.
Like, oh, I'm just not riding good or this or that. And I think just things change. You could be happy one day as a clam, and then over time, you adjust your chain and like the bike starts to get soft and settle because the frame starts to get, broken in.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And you fall over, you crash and your forks get a little bit tweaked and then you go out to ride and your bike's getting a little bit deflective and you're kind of like, this bike's no good. And,
interesting.
Try to, sometimes blame it on the bike or, just the suspension isn't set up. But we do a lot of trackside support and a lot of times it's really just honestly the simple basic things, just kind of retightening stuff, loosening stuff and retorquing it,
Yeah, that's another good point that you bring up that I didn't think about is this obviously is not like a one-time thing probably for most riders because they're going to need to be tweaked and tuned up and all the things. Yeah. Yeah.
And with that being said, I'd say, and you might already be asking this question later, but like probably one of the most challenging things, I guess, for us is like the younger fast riders in their teens because they are just growing so fast. They're getting really fast. And it's like we have to almost reevaluate their setup every time they come in just because they're getting, just quicker and bigger.
A very good point.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning earlier how size is such a big factor.
Absolutely.
And that changes so fast at that age. That's a really good point. Yeah. Wow. Have there been any major innovations in suspension technology in the recent years that you've really seen? Or is it kind of just more like old school the way it's been?
Honestly, since probably about 2006, it's been pretty much the same like design. There has been some different things like a little bit bigger cartridge tubes to allow more oil flow and different pistons and all kinds of stuff like that. But it's probably like, talking gibberish to people about it, like to kind of explain it. But like at the same time, it's kind of, there's just like a million ways to skin a cat. And like just because they changed it doesn't necessarily mean it's better. And sometimes it's like anything, they might change it and they thought it was going to be better, but it was actually worse, right?
Yeah.
But more or less, all the bikes are coming really, really good now, especially like the main brand we work on, like WP and KTM. The bikes are really good now, which isn't the best for my business, but
So that's not good. No.
we still,
No,
need to set people up and get the
yeah.
bike working good, even if we just kind of just do a basic setup on it,
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Well, and again, like you were saying, tuning things up too. Like if somebody falls or something like that, it probably needs to come in and see you as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's very cool. So how do you kind of stay ahead of the competition and kind of continue to learn in this specialized field? And is there a lot of competition?
There's more and more competition every day.
Yeah.
The more people see you succeed, everybody kind of wants to jump in
Yeah,
that
that's
captain
true.
chair. But it's kind of funny. Like I think, like I said, it's a very challenging job, and I think everybody after tuning suspension for a year or two be like, wait a minute, what did I get into?
Right.
At the same time,
it's like that with real estate too.
Right. At the same time, it is very rewarding when like somebody makes it far or does something really well with it.
Cool.
Right. So, the competition, it's always there. It's always going to be there. But all we can do is kind of like to be the best we can be.
Yeah.
And I feel like our customer service and our quality of workmanship is pretty good. So we've been staying busy.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, and again, I don't mean to keep going back to your reviews, but some of them were like, I had this situation and I was talking to, people at a race and everybody was like, oh, you got to take it to Joel. So I feel like you have quite the reputation out there.
We do. And I feel like we have a really big toolbox.
Great. Yeah.
We have a lot of information, we know a lot. So, that's really, it's like, knowing's half the battle a lot of the times,
For sure.
So, but and as far as like staying ahead of it, like we do try to go to races still and
That's a good point.
Support local riders. And we always support like the District 36 local enduro and cross country series.
Great.
So like if somebody gets a hole shot or wins a race, they get a gift certificate and stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of brings me a little bit to what is the racing culture like here in Northern California?
It's pretty big. It goes in waves, Obviously during COVID, it was huge. It was massive. Like
get outside.
Everybody was riding dirt bikes.
Even
people's dogs were riding dirt bikes at that
Wait,
point.
what?
Right? Like it was crazy.
I have not seen that yet. Now I feel like I need to go look up videos on YouTube.
But yeah, so
it's pretty big.
It's there's a lot of people riding out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. What's next for 707 Racing Suspension? Any plans?
I mean, I've always kind of had a vision of like trying to do like a clothing company.
That'd be cool.
Or like a goggle brand or a gear line or something like that.
Yeah.
Just maybe less work and sell more stuff at some point.
Yeah. That's a great plan. Yeah.
Or we would like to kind of get like on on the main stage and help like a really solid pro rider out too at some point. But
that's awesome.
It's also challenging with life and a family, and you kind of almost have to live on the road to do that. So
maybe like when the kids are all grown. Do they come with you to races now?
They do, yeah.
And do they race at all?
That my son races like pretty much every weekend.
That's what I've seen videos of. Yeah.
And my daughter, she kind of does some of the fun ones that are,
how
more
cool.
her style. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so fun. Yeah. Maybe when they're a little older.
Yeah.
Or maybe like your youngest will take over for you at some point.
Yeah. You never know.
That'd be cool. Do you have like a big team right now that you work with, or how many people are?
So we've done a couple race teams in the past.
Yeah.
We did like a 24-hour Glen Helen thing, and what that is, it's like a 24-hour race and 6 riders, 2 bikes, and we actually won that twice.
Wow, that's cool.
Which is really, really cool. The race team thing can be challenging just because we try to be fair with everybody, and we more just decided to individually sponsor everybody at this point, just because makes sense. It's just easier.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of really fast riders that we're helping out. We had, I think, 3 or 4 guys that went to ISDE in Italy and raced 6 days last year.
Wow.
So that was really cool.
Yeah.
And they all did really well.
That's so cool. That's so cool to watch that and see like your work, really. Yeah.
Pretty neat.
That's amazing. Yeah. So coming off of work for a little bit, what are 3 fun facts about you personally?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I'm not really a very fun guy. All I do is work. And,
well, you do have a fun job.
Yeah, I have a really fun job. So, I don't know. I think I'm just always thinking about how I can just do stuff better and change stuff. So people, I say I'm kind of quiet, but I think it's just because I'm always daydreaming about something.
Yeah.
You know?
You're probably always thinking about, your next thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, fun fact, I didn't realize too that you know my father-in-law, so that's kind of a fun fact.
Right.
That's amazing. So is there anything that I missed that you would like our listeners to know?
And that's one thing I was just going to say.
Yeah.
What's really cool about like dirt bikes is the motorcycle dirt bike world is so small. It's like I can go somewhere across the United States and we know somebody who knows somebody. It's pretty incredible. So
that's so cool to me. Yeah, like I literally didn't know until about 30 minutes before that you knew him, before you came in. And I see you at school and all the things, so it's funny. Yeah, it's funny to connect those two worlds. Amazing. Where can my listeners find you if they want to come bring in their bikes or follow social media or anything like that?
Absolutely. So we have a website, www.707suspension.com. And then we are on Instagram, 707 Suspension, and Facebook.
Perfect.
And we do sell hats and shirts and sweatshirts and all windbreakers and kinds of cool stuff like that at the shop.
Cool. So you go into the shop to get those, not online, right?
You can do both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then we also have like a little store where we sell tires and parts and stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool.
So, yeah.
I was thinking when you were like kind of describing everything, how many parts you must order. Like how many different kinds of parts. I was thinking about the inventory of that. Yeah, that's where my brain went. So funny. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming in today. It was so good to, officially meet you and actually learn what this world looks like, because I really don't know other than what I see online.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, please be sure to like and subscribe, learn more about Sonoma County and all that we have to offer here.